It's done. It's finally done. So the gravel pad is in place and it has been compacted to the best of our abilities. It is ready to receive 2 containers. There's kind of a little crest up in the center, but that's not actually a big deal. What we have here, it's kind of hard to see, is a road base, number 357, with then a number 57 above it. I've actually put out seed already, so I need the straw after this. But I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and this is kind of an update, kind of a testimonial video on the quality of the work and some key notes about the project right now. First off, when we're using rock like this, we will be raking this rock out of the surrounding area for an eternity. It's just the way it is. But in order to get airflow, this rock cannot be on grade. What does that mean? That means the clay out here that's going to have grass growing in it, the rock has to be higher than the grass and the sod and everything as it comes in. That way we can have an opportunity for drainage, because if we have a heavy rain with some containers here, we have a heavy rain, we want that rain to run off. We want it to spread and soak, but we also want it to run off or otherwise evaporate as we get airflow through our rock here. Now, a pole barn or a timber frame barn can go on a concrete pad as well. That's not suitable for this terrace though. So if we were going to do an earthworks terrace in order to put a concrete pad on here, it would be done slightly differently. I would do a much larger terrace, and I would make sure that we've got the level and the compaction is actually done by a machine. So rather than just putting it in and keeping it level and compacting with equipment, I'd bring in a piece of equipment that's designated for compaction. It has those big round wheels on them with the little nubs, and that would have tracked this out and made it a lot more dense and a lot more secure. And then this pad right here, while we still would have a gravel pad in place, the gravel pad would be below grade and it would be boxed in. It would have moisture barrier. There's no moisture barrier under here. There's no geotextiles under here. This is a temporary pad, or a pad that's suitable for a basic barn. But there would be a lot more under here to prevent moisture from coming up through the floor. And then there would be some kind of reinforcement, and then ultimately the concrete itself. So again, we want the appropriate solution for the outcome we're looking for. Now, some people are going to suggest in the comments, you could have just dumped the gravel here, spread it out, and then put your containers on it, then later put your building on. You know, it's just gravel. They can always put the pylons for the building and bring in more gravel in the future. Well, first off, it's not gravel, it's crushed stone. Second is the drainage trench around the outside is a lot easier to put in now than to put in later. If we put it in later, we're going to have to expand the size of the pad, which means that we'd have to have a bigger earthworks underneath it, and then it would just be a different setup. Why not do it right the first time while you got the equipment on site, and then work with it from there. Now you see the big rocks and then the small rocks. The big rocks is a road base, and it's tracked in, and then we have the small rocks that are spread out on top of it and tracked in again to give us kind of a more secure, but it's still, you can still move the rock around a little bit. So when I go to put the container in, the blocks that are going to be under the corners of the container, I can actually get those level and then kind of rake out the rest to get, as you know, it only has to be level under the 2 containers. The 2 containers have to be on the same plane of existence in order for that to work out the way it needs to work out. Now, what we got here on the outside edges, though, is I rake that up by hand. They did it nice and neat, but I did rake it up to kind of tidy it up a little bit, because I want that grass edge. I want the deep grass in there. And then it's not going to be a perfectly straight line, because you saw the videos. That was a dump truck dumping tons of material down, so it's not going to be perfect. But that's okay. We've designed it so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be right. Remember the good, better, and best. The best would be a foundation put in by a general contractor that's going to support a building in the future that's going to have occupancy. This building is going to have my truck parked in it or other type of equipment parked in it. It's going to have 2 lockable storage containers, which I do need to call my insurance company before they get out on site to make sure I've got all that stuff straight. But again, the pad is 3 clean sides. And then on this side, it's just the entry point. Now, the pad itself is elevated, and it's elevated maybe 4 inches or so. The rest of the 2 inches is actually underground. And then we start counting our depth after the first load of material was tracked in. So the first load of material was tracked in until the clay wouldn't accept any more rock. And then we measure our 6 inches up. And then around the outside, there's about a foot and a half trench that's filled with rock under the same circumstances. There's a little drainage ditch that comes off of here. Again, every site's going to be different. But this open end, we want to be able to bring those containers in on a 5th wheel and have them back in here nice and neat. So he has his 120 foot up that way to this other corner. Well, I can't see it because the truck's in the way, but there's a specification that was needed for them to be able to deliver those containers. And so the rock on the end here, we just allow it to kind of flow off so that there's not a major bump. But about here where I'm standing, under here is that trench, and that is our edge of the container. Now we built in our design a 4-foot perimeter around the containers. So if they're in here north and south, so we got a container in here north and south, and there's 16 feet between both containers. And those containers are parallel with each other. And both of those containers are the same height because they're level between the 2 of them. Then when it comes time to build the barn around it, they'll have up to 2 feet in order to put their pillars in that are going to go down into what was the original soil underneath here in order to hold the barn up over the 2 containers. Now we'll have more videos on that. We'll follow through the steps. Make sure you ask your questions, because what we're looking for here is cost effective in order to get the lockable storage for feed and a small amount of equipment. The ability to get this barn under cover. It'll have a 2nd floor for hay or for other types of storage, or just for us to sit up here and look out in the woods. But ultimately, it's going to be, it's a barn. It's not a house. And I keep saying that because, again, the agricultural appropriate implementation is built not on my opinion, but a number of different experts that I've gotten together, some design plans for the manufacturer and the person who's going to install the barn itself. We could have done it for less money, but again, we want to do this one time and be done with it. The next projects that are coming down the line, besides getting these containers here and getting the barn overhead, will be to have up our fencing before the barn is up. So we have a trail down there in the woods, and we have a big long trail out that side. I need to put a fence in, a hot line fence, in order to run our temporary fencing off of that fence so that we can start getting the goats over here. And then when the goats are over here, somebody will be spending a lot of time over here to take care of the goats and then make sure that they're maintained. And again, that's why we have a building with lockable storage. And then we're bringing over some sheds, and the kid's going to do a tiny house project. And we may have some wall tents set up here. And there's a RV trailer around the corner, so that we can make sure those animals are taken care of. This is not a suitable ground for having animals. If I was going to have animals in a barn, then I would have to have a concrete floor, or I'd have to have dirt floor is not appropriate. There needs to be some kind of floor that can be cleaned. But instead of having animals in this building, we're going to have either mobile shelters or a number of shelters stationed along the hotline fence. So the aerials that I've done for this property, and these I'm giving you these ideas and things because they're things that you can do for your property. I can station 2 or 3 pavilions out there to house the animals. So what I'm going to end up doing, see all these nice little straight pine trees, is I really enjoy woodworking and the sense of building buildings. You know, I used to build forts when I was a kid a lot. I'm learning some timber framing techniques, natural building techniques with some local folks around here, and I will actually build those 3-sided pavilions out in the woods from materials on site, and then we'll put either a tin roof on it or some kind of simple roofing so that the animals have some shelter out in the woods. But those shelters will be shared between paddocks, or there will be a mobile shelter on skids. It just really depends on what we're doing. There may also just be a centralized shelter to bring them in, but this is not it. I keep repeating over and over the appropriateness of this building and our particular design, because I see, unfortunately, a lot of mistakes on the internet. I see a lot of folks setting up stuff and doing infrastructure for their property, and then they'll put $100,000 in improvements on a property, and then next thing you know, their operation is too big for the property, and they've got to go move to another property. And that can be a good thing, but most of the time it's a bad thing. Another thing happens too is that their operation is insufficient. So they put a lot of money into infrastructure and they realize they've ended up with things they didn't need. So our goal is to help you get that dream into a reality with appropriate technology. If this doesn't work out, the worst thing that'll happen is they'll move 2 containers out, and then they'll come scrape up the rock and use it someplace else. They might go put it in the driveway or something. Now these roads are not suitable to drive on when it's wet. So this property itself is going to be mostly walk-in. And then, of course, the animals are going to move through the property there are 2 big paddocks, or 2 big pastures, and they're separated into cells, or paddocks. They're separated into cells. The animals are going to move through the cells until we have permanent fencing around the entire property. And then those cells will be more defined with corner posts. But again, that's why you want to make sure you subscribe. That's why you want to make sure you ask questions, because not only have I done projects like this on different, IT projects and larger scale projects. You've seen my videos with the work we did in the city, but I want to make sure you can understand how this flows so that you can get the results that you're looking for. And check that out right there. Isn't that beautiful? That's a deer print right there. But again, I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, and I am happy as a clam that this pad is done. All I got to do is order the containers and they will be here. We're going to paint the containers and seal the top and stuff like that, but stay tuned. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening. And then finally, if you want to do something like this at your small farm, or you're developing a homestead, I can show you how to do the project plan in such a way that not only can you stay within budget, but you can start getting production on the land right away. The key thing about making this a farm is actually doing agricultural work. Now, it's forestry agriculture, but it's hard to justify that when you have such scrub. But again, getting the goats in, getting a chicken tractor in, getting some pigs in, getting those things in, you also don't want to go in too quick. Because if the right infrastructure is not in place, then you can end up in a situation where it's a little bit hard to manage. So there's a lot of people that get frustrated with permaculture. They get frustrated with agriculture. Now they'll make it look really good on the internet, okay? So we're showing you as it actually is, not hiding anything or making it look good for entertainment. I'm not the most entertaining person. But what we've done here, the number of days, the costs and everything, if you want to learn more about that, some of the things that we've done for appropriateness, rather than, if an inspector came out here, there aren't any problems. It's suitable for agriculture, and it's a little overbuilt in some areas, but we didn't cut corners in areas that are going to impact our usability over time. And then if you want to talk about expansion plans, or you want to attend a course, there are courses forming in the area. Like I've said, earthworks course, fencing course, homesteading skills course, survival essentials courses. I'm actually networking with a lot of these trainers in my region, natural building course, in order to make sure that we're building a community of skills here, and that many of these skills that last a lifetime, building my animal shelters with stuff that's on site is going to save a lot of money, and it's not that hard to do, and it gets me into farm faster, and things like this just really make a difference to build a prosperous homestead. I'm Justin Hitt. You could ask your questions here in the comments, or visit www.prosperityhomestead.org And I'm going to shut up right now so you can hear that wonderful bird.